All right, so remember when you are solving these, one of the things I suggested was that you highlight each part, and we know that our parts are broken up in our by addition and subtraction. So this first part is this part here that I'm underlining in orange, and then we have our second part here. Now within this first bracket though, we have multiple things that are being broken up by the addition and subtraction. So I'm going to highlight each of those individually as well. And remember, when we do our parts, it's all the ones that are being separated by our addition or our subtraction. Those are what we'll eventually refer to as our terms, but it's the different parts that we have. So before we can multiply anything by 2, because that's 2 times when it's written next to the bracket like that, we need to do everything on the inside. And remember, in our PEMDAS, even though the M is written before the D, multiplying doesn't come first, it's left to right. So when I go to do this, here I have this 20. So I know that this 20 is going to come down to just be a 20. So it's 20 plus or 20 minus, depending on after we multiply if there's any negative numbers. So here I see 6 times 8. So that needs to be done first. So it becomes 48. And then it's divided by everything that follows in this parentheses. And within this parentheses, what we need to do first is our division, because it came first in our left to right. So 16 divided by 4 is 4, and then we will multiply the 3 at the end. So it's 48 divided by 12. So now we have 20 plus 48 divided by 12. And that was everything inside the brackets as we're starting to break it down. And then first we would have to do a 48 divided by 12, which is 4. So we have 2 times 20 plus 4, which then becomes 2 times 24, which will give me 48. So this entire first part here, after we followed our order of operations, gave us 48. And then we're going to subtract everything inside is parentheses. So before we can subtract this 8, though, we have to do 5 times 2. So it's minus. 5 times 2 is 10 minus 8. So it's minus 2 or just minus 2. So 48 minus 2 is equal to 46. And that would be your final answer. All right, let's move on to the next question. So same thing here. I'm going to highlight all my different parts. So the first one I see is this entire bracket, and it ends at this plus sign, so that's my first one. The second one here that we have is going to be going from the plus to the minus, so that's our next part, or next term, as we'll eventually be calling them. And then our last term, our last part we have is here after that minus sign. So this allows for me to focus on each of them individually. And I suggest that you use the highlighters or the markers or everything I provide for you within the classroom. So within this bracket, I need to do 16 divided by, but now I see that we have these parentheses, so I need to do everything in these parentheses first. And I have a division and addition, so the division has to come first. So 24 divided by 4 is 6, so is 6. So now we have 6 plus 2, which is equal to 8. So we have 16 divided by 8 within those brackets, and 16 divided by 8 is 2. So all of that bracket will simplify to give me a 2. So now as we move on to the next one, we have within these brackets, we have a minus and a multiplying, but multiplying comes first in our PEMDAS. So now we have 15 minus, well, 5 times 2 is 10. And it's plus this, and 15 minus 10 is 5, so it's going to be plus 5 that the yellow part will reduce to. And then the last part that we have here, once again, it's minus everything inside this parentheses, and we have a subtraction and a multiplying just like we did in our previous part or term. So now it's minus 15 minus 9, because 3 times 3 is 9, and it's minusing that. So then it's 15 minus 9, so it's minus 6 that we can write. So now we have 2 plus 5 minus 6, and then we'll just go ahead and do this a little piece by piece. So 2 plus 5 will give me 7, and 7 minus 6 is going to be just 1. So that's how we get 1 as our answer there. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next question. So here we actually see it's 25 divided by, and then all of this remaining part is in a bracket. So I'm just going to focus on the inside of that bracket then. So on the inside of this bracket, we just have this 12. So because now we have the plus sign, so it's breaking up into its parts. So after the 12, from the plus sign to the minus sign, we have this next part that we're going to focus on individually. And then we have this minus, and then 5 times 6 plus. So this is my next part I'm focusing on. And I'm just going to keep moving down as we're being separated by the plus or minus signs to think about my different parts or my different terms. So then we just have this plus 6 at the end. So now I don't need to do anything with this 12. So I'm going to go ahead and just write this down and bring this down. So now we'll have a bracket of 12. And then I'm going to go through each part. So here we have a plus and a multiplying. So the multiplying need to come first. So it's plus 5 plus, well, 2 times 10 is 20. So it's plus 25, where the green part of this is going to just reduce to 25. The next part, we have minus, and all we have here is just multiplying. So it's minus 5 times 6, which is minus 30, that we can go ahead and bring down. And then from here, we have 2 times. Well, we need to do what's inside the parentheses first. And inside the parentheses, we have a minus and multiplying. So the multiplying needs to come first. So it's plus 2 times 12 minus 6, or plus 2 times 6, or plus 12. So now we get plus 12. And then the last part that we have here, there's nothing being done to it, so it just comes down as plus 6. And that's everything inside of our bracket. But don't forget, it was 25 divided by this. So now we just go ahead and simplify everything in this bracket, and it's just adding or subtracting. So we're just going to go ahead and do that left to right. So 12 plus 25 is 37. So now I'm left with 37 minus 30. So then 37 minus 30 is going to give me 7 plus 12 plus 6, and 7 plus 12 plus 6. So we have 19 plus 6, which is 25. And remember, all of this was 25 divided by that. So now we have 25 divided by 25, which is equal to 1. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to the 2 word problems that you guys asked for me to do as well. All right, so for this word problem, well, first, let's just go ahead and read it through. So it says, how many 3/4 ounce packages of flour can be made with a total of 12 ounces of flour? So remember, we're given a total, and then we're saying how many of this type of package can we make? So one of the things we talked about is, are we given the parts and creating the total, or are we given a total and then breaking it into parts? And here we're given a total and we're breaking it into parts. And when we talked about that, that means that we're going to be using one of 2 things, either subtraction or division. When we're given a total and we're breaking it down, it's one of those 2 methods that we're going to use. And with subtraction, we're only really going to be figuring out, like, of the total, how much is left over, meaning like how much do we still have in total left when we remove this part. Where division, it's how much of the total can we break into equal parts. So it's like if I have $100 and I'm trying to share it with 10 friends, that would be division, because I'm saying how much can each friend get to be even. And then if I said, well, if I had $100 and I spent 10, how much do I have left over? That will be subtraction, because I'm not breaking it into equal parts, but I'm taking my total I had and removing whatever I used out of it and saying, well, what's left over? So this one will be division, because we're trying to take the total and break it into equal parts. So our total amount is 12. So we will do 12 divided by how much we're making each part into. So it's 3/4. And then our rules is keep, change, flip. Yeah, it's the action. Everybody knows how we're dividing fractions. So we keep our first one. I'm going to write it as a fraction. We change to multiplying, and we multiply by the reciprocal. You say you love me, but now you're flipping like reciprocals. And then from here, 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into 12 4 times. So we can do 4 times 4, which is 16. So we can make a total of 16 packages that each are 3/4 of an ounce when we have a total of 12 ounces of flour. All right, and then the last one here, it says the table below shows how much profit or loss a company had over the last 7 years. It says 7. How much profit or loss did the company report in millions over the 7 years? And then it says here, and this is where you guys seem to be getting confused in class, it says that our profit is in billions. And you're like, well, you're telling us that the answer is going to be in millions. At the end of this problem, I will discuss that, and it will make sense then. But when I say actually report in millions, and you see that the profit is given in a different form, I'm actually, as you'll see, telling you what to expect for your answer. And if you ended up doing this work and didn't get to that part, that should jump out at you like, oh, okay, maybe I made a mistake, because it's not actually in millions like it was being told how we had to write it. All right, so we know that profit means that they made money, and when they lose money, it's negative. So we can say that each year which one they had a profit or loss. But if we want to know how much profit or loss they had over the 7 years, well, then we just need to add up all the profit or loss that they had in a total of the 7 years. So to make this a little bit easier for me, I'm just going to focus on my positive numbers first, because since they're all the same sign, I can just add them together to figure out how much total profit, or how much in the years that they did make money or had profit, how much total did they have. So I can add those up. So this will be 4, 6, and 7. And then we have 11 and 12. So that means of those years that they made money, they had a total of $12.7 billion in profit. And then the next 3 years, though, we see that they lost money. So if I want to say, okay, well, in the years that they lost, how much do they lose in total? Since they're all the same sign, I can just treat them as positive numbers and add them like I normally would. So this will give me 8 plus 5 is 13. So 5 plus 5 is 10 plus 3 is 13. So in the years, and since they were all negative, I know that my final answer is actually negative 13.3. So in the years that they lost money, they lost a total of negative of $13.3 billion. So if I want to know what they did with all those years combined, I need to combine these two. And since they're different signs, I will take the larger number, so 13.3, and subtract the smaller one of 12.7. And this is going to give me 0.6. But since the larger number was negative, it is actually negative 0.6. So you see, now we're going to talk about how we can report this in millions. So when it says it's in billions of dollars, if I gave you 1.0, the ones digit, since they're telling us it's in billions, represents billions, and then all of our decimals after that would represent the next type of number. So this 1.0 I can actually write as 1 billion if I wanted to, out like this. So it's just allowing us to take these really large numbers and just write them a little bit more conveniently for us. So by doing that, we just need to be able to read this chart. So this 8.1 is actually equal to $8,100,000,000, because it's telling us if it's in billions, then the ones is representing our billions, and then the 10th decimal will be the place value less than billion, which is 100 million. So when I see the 0.2, that is actually equal to, so we don't have any billions, so that means that our first number is actually this 0.2, so it's the 100 million, so that's actually representing $200 million. So when I tell you that your answer is going to be in millions and the table is in something else, that means at the end, when we combine all of our numbers, it's going to be in the form of a million. So I would know that my answer is not going to have a whole number in my ones, because it's telling us it's not going to be in billions. That's just a way for you to be able to check your work. So the way I can write this out, since it's minus, I know it's a loss. And then 0.6, there's no billion, so it's a loss of, well, that represents $600 million. So you can either write it out as a number, or if you wanted to, you could say a loss of $600 million. You could write it out in words as well. All right, so that is it for this video.